Let's bring in Michael Kaskey-Blomain of 97.3 ESPN.com and have him kind of break it down. We'll get his opinions on the actual deal Colangelo did pull off. He made two, one last night, one today. Michael, what's going on, pal?
What's up, Mike? How you doing?
Good, man. And all right, I want to hear your opinions on this because there's a lot of detractors on Bryan Colangelo right now. Many people scratching their heads. Why'd they trade Nerlens Noel, number one, and what about the deal, the package they got back in return?
Yeah, I think a whole lot of people in Philadelphia, fans and people I've spoken to since the deal went down are definitely not happy with the trade and with the return that the team got for Nerlens, which, I think we knew that the return might be a little bit low, especially considering his restricted free agency this summer. But I think the return as far as, Justin Anderson and basically a top 20 protected first-round pick was lower than even, a lot of people expected considering the restricted free agency.
Yeah, so, Noel is a guy that I think if you polled a lot of Sixers fans, they would rather him be here and Okafor be gone. In the end, was this just the best deal you think they could find?
It seems like that way. I find that a little bit hard to believe, considering, especially if you think about some of the deals that were reportedly discussed back around the draft for these two guys when we were talking, higher first-round picks and, more talented, veterans coming back in return. It seems that, the market certainly slipped, and that might have been a result of the teams just simply waiting too long to make this move, with Nerlens really only having 30 games left under contract. It seems that I believe it was Zach Lowe that officially reported that, the market basically just wasn't there since teams knew that, he was going to be commanding a big salary this summer and basically trading for him. You'd have to, pay him again in a few months. So I think that really, really hurt the Sixers' ability to get any sort of value back for him at this point.
So, does this indicate to you that they had no intention of matching the money for Nerlens Noel and that they believed that somebody else was going to throw money at him?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe. I think that's what this trade comes down to. You and I had discussed this, in the weeks leading up to today. I had that the flow chart about if the team should trade Nerlens, and it basically came down to I think there was doubts all along, since Colangelo took over about Noel's long-term fit in the organization, and I think the team was skeptical about investing in what probably projects to be around $20 million a year in a guy that's going to be a backup as long as Embiid is around. I don't think Nerlens' attitude at the very beginning of this season helped his cause very much as far as staying with the team. From what I've heard, I think that kind of, him being so public and outward with his feelings about the situation, I don't think that was something that the GM Bryan Colangelo was very fond of. I'm not saying that led directly to a move, but I certainly don't think it helped his case. And, it just came down to this was the last day that the Sixers had. If they were going to get anything for Nerlens or, without him just walking this summer, this was the last chance they got. And I guess that, that Mavericks deal was the best they could do at this time.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain with us. Michael, why do you think the Sixers had doubts about re-signing Nerlens Noel to a big money deal this offseason?
That's a good question, Pete. I think the main issue would probably be just the amount of money that he was going to command on an open market in contrast to what his role would be on the team. I don't think you see too many, well-built franchises around the league that have, 18 to 20 million a year invested in a guy who's projected to be a long-term backup. I think that was certainly a big part of it, probably the biggest factor in the decision. If in a vacuum, if obviously Embiid, let's say, wasn't on the team or something like that, I think Nerlens was a guy that they would have looked to as kind of the centerpiece going forward. But, as long as Joel is on this team and hopefully healthy, he's the team's, the team's building around him. He's the center. And it just felt, I guess, kind of superfluous for them to spend $20 million on a backup. And like I said, I also don't think his attitude necessarily. He's had a couple incidents, nothing like too egregious, but there's been a few reports of, his attitude issues throughout the time since he's been in Philadelphia, and I think they just felt that it wasn't an investment that they were quite ready to make.
Then why not just match, Michael? Don't they have better leverage in a deal if he's under contract?
That's another great question, Pete, and I think a lot of people were wondering that when it came down to it this summer. at that point, I think it's just a matter of not having the money tied up. Like you said, there would be probably better leverage if he was, re-signed this summer and they could move him then already under a contract. That's certainly a route that I thought that they might have pursued had he not been traded today. I guess, Bryan, it was actually just announced Bryan Colangelo was set to speak to the media members tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. I'm sure that's something that he'll address specifically why they chose this route now rather than, kind of holding on and waiting till the summer. And, that's something that I'd certainly be interested in hearing from him.
They're putting a lot of stock into Embiid being healthy, right? I mean, you're basically saying, hey, Noel's no longer here. This is the guy. We know that he's the guy in terms they view as the franchise guy, but it almost seems like they also want to try to move Okafor if they can, which means they're putting a lot of stock in the health of Embiid.
A whole lot of stock, and especially it's not the most reassuring thing when they announce that he's out for the next 4 games, 20 minutes after they trade Nerlens Noel. I think there's definitely a little bit of fear in the fan base right now and, a whole new added level of pressure, not necessarily on Joel, but just on his ability to stay healthy. Like you said, there was kind of always this safety blanket in the back. Like, we have all these guys, if Embiid isn't able to go necessarily for stretches, we can, throw Nerlens in there and not lose much, especially on the defensive end. Now with him gone, there's, like you said, moving forward, especially starting with next season, it really looks like the Sixers are banking on, Joel being healthy and able to play a lot of minutes and a lot of games.
Mike Gill and I talked a lot about that. Okafor doesn't have to look over his shoulder, but in your mind, do you think they're trying to showcase Okafor and then move him before the draft?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel too safe in my position now that even though that Noel's gone, if I'm Joel, I do think. I mean, there was contradicting reports leading right up to the deadline that the team had either, was still trying to shop Ja even though Nerlens was gone, and I think a report from David Aldridge that said that they weren't, that they were going to hold on to him. But with that being said, I don't think they were a little bit more less willing to get rid of him than I think a lot of the fans were. But at the same time, I don't think that the team is necessarily, invested in Okafor for the long term by any means. I think that was obviously evidenced by the fact that they, had almost, obviously traded him last week and sat him out. So, for the rest of this season, I think for him at least, it's a good thing. He'll be able to, like you said, kind of play without having to look over his shoulder. He'll certainly, be seeing more minutes now with both Noel and Ilyasova out of the roster. That opens up, a bunch of front court minutes. He'll be the starter probably at least for the next few games with Embiid still sidelined. So we'll be seeing some more Jahlil Okafor without the pressure, probably like you said, to look over his shoulder. But I would not be surprised if once right around draft day comes again and new rumors pop up about the Sixers looking to move on from Okafor for something.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, 97.3 ESPN.com. The Sixers trade Noel today. They trade Ilyasova last night. So Okafor is the guy who's left here. Do they keep Okafor around just to kind of get through this year, or because they couldn't find a suitor for him? Why is Okafor still here? Because it's the irony is his name was the one that kept coming up. He's the one here. Noel's the one that's gone. I mean, at the last minute, they wanted to trade Okafor, right?
They did. In all reality, from what I had heard, they had never, they had always continued to entertain offers for Noel. He kind of had been on the back burner in recent weeks as the, all the rumors about Ja had really heated up. But, if you remember back in September and October, it was Noel when he was injured and not playing. There was a lot of speculation about him potentially being traded. And while that died down, I don't think it ever really went away. So I think there was interest on a team to move both players. It certainly ends up being, kind of a twist of fate after all the reports of Okafor being the one that was going to be gone, that the fact that he's still on the team. But, I think it just comes down to the fact that Bryan overplayed his hand with Okafor a little bit from, what I've been able to gather. It seems like he, kind of wanted a little bit more than what the market, valued him at. And other trades happened in the meantime, and the market basically dried up. And now, now he's with the Sixers at least until the summer, for better or for worse.
MKB, you were one of the few, if not the only, to report the interest in Ilyasova. Got sent to Atlanta last night in a deal. Break that move down for us.
Yeah, that was interesting. I had heard that there was quite a few teams actually really interested in Ilyasova's services leading up to the deadline. As he's a guy that is kind of prototypical in today's NBA as a stretch four, a guy that can space the floor and play a little bit of defense. So there's a lot of teams that think he could would fit in nicely with what they're trying to do. I wasn't necessarily very surprised that move went down. He didn't really have he's another guy that was hitting free agency this summer. I didn't really expect the Sixers to, extend him a contract offer, and it kind of just opens up the spot for, Dario Saric to kind of step into that starting role, get more minutes and more opportunity, and that's a guy that's been playing, really well over the past stretch of weeks, and that is a part of the future. So it kind of getting the Ilyasova move, it probably makes the team a little bit worse in the short term, but it opens up the role and the minutes for a guy that's really going to be part of the future as opposed to a guy that didn't really have a long-term place with the franchise.
Yeah, and I guess the compensation for that isn't something that just, wows you, but it tells you that they believe in Dario a lot more than they did maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Mike. I think a lot of us actually believe in Dario. He's more so than we did at the very beginning of the season. He's shown really quick development, kind of learning on the go throughout, especially since 2017 started. He had a great January and has been having a solid February. And, like I said, Ilyasova wasn't going to be a guy that I think they were interested in paying market value for to bring back next summer. So it was kind of like a smaller scale version of the Noel deal. Basically, just get a return, while you can for a guy that you probably weren't going to bring back in the offseason anyway.
Give me your thoughts on Colangelo at his first deadline here.
I mean, I'm not impressed, to be honest with you. I not necessarily. I understand the rationale behind trading Nerlens Noel. If I was the GM, I would have what Pete alluded to as far as matching offers for him, this summer, and then, kind of having him. And then if you want to move on from there, you can do it with a little bit more leverage. They obviously didn't want to take that route. But with that being said, it just seems that Nerlens is a guy that, we kind of all look to as one of these nice assets to have and, kind of in our back pocket or as a security blanket, and to lose that for, what kind of feels like pennies on the dollar. Justin Anderson might pan out. He's, not had a great run at it so far in Dallas. And, another very low first or 2 second rounders potentially. It just feels a little bit low to be honest with you. And I feel like, walking away from this trade deadline, I understand where not quite, I wouldn't say there's, a level of panic or anything like that, but I could certainly understand a little bit of trepidation on the part of the Sixers fans as far as the direction that Colangelo has taken this thing.
So there's a lot of stuff that unfolds after this now, and it's interesting. What happens with Bogut? Give us a little, rundown of what goes on in Bogut, because they get Bogut in the deal. He'll never wear a uniform.
Yeah, never. I'm pretty sure if it's probably in the process already right now. I think he's going to be bought out by the team, which obviously means they buy out the rest of his contract, and he then basically becomes free to sign elsewhere as a free agent. There's probably a plethora of contenders that would be interested in getting him for this playoff push. So it's unfortunate that the Sixers couldn't flip him for something small. I think they were trying to in the couple hours in between of when they acquired him from Dallas to the 3 o'clock deadline. I think they were searching for suitors to try to get, any sort of value back for that contract that they took on, and it didn't work. So, at this point, that was basically just a throw into the deal. They won't get anything out of it. He'll be bought out and signed elsewhere.
Michael, we talked to Mark Jackson earlier, and he was real high on Richaun Holmes. Does this open up minutes for Holmes, and does it show that they value him more?
Absolutely, Pete. I don't know if it necessarily shows that they value him more or if it's kind of just going to be a byproduct of the moves, but it absolutely opens up a bigger role for Richaun, which is, I think, to me, one of the biggest silver linings in the past couple of deals. I wrote for us on 97.3 a couple months ago that I thought Richaun Holmes deserved a lot more minutes, and then he was kind of the biggest casualty of the logjam situation since his minutes were, really just getting eaten up. So now he's a guy that has showed a lot of flash and promise, but hasn't really got the consistent run to kind of gauge exactly what he can bring to a team going forward. So I definitely expect for the last 30-odd games or whatever's left in the season for him to be a guy that's going to get an extended run to to give the Sixers an idea of really what they have in him on a nightly basis going forward.
What did we learn today, looking at the current team, about Ben Simmons? I guess he's not even part of the current team, but let's start with him.
Yeah, that's another thing. You have to consider, a lot of the moves that they make are with Ben Simmons in mind. So, it seems that they really are trying to clear space for him. Obviously, they moved 2 front court players in 2 trades in a row. I think he's going to be a guy that, while he might handle the point guard duties as reported, he'll probably play in the front court a lot. So, I think the moves that they made definitely factored into that. It was reported also that they were looking to add some defensive-minded guards to pair him with. Avery Bradley was mentioned as one from the Celtics. So I think I don't think the Sixers the move making is done. It's obviously paused for now for the remainder of the season. But I really think that once the free agency opens again come the summertime and the NBA draft, we'll be talking about them looking to add more pieces that fit with Ben going forward, because he's along with Joel, basically every move they make from and have made is basically framed on him being a part of the team.
Did they give any update on that CT scan or anything today? I know Brett Brown spoke today, had a little bit to say about him, but any revelation about playing time, when he might be ready?
No, Brett, like you said, Brett talked today. He was very basically tight-lipped, as you would expect. He said he couldn't really give any sort of an update on a timetable based off the results today. I'm hoping, like I said, the Sixers PR team just announced that Bryan will be speaking tomorrow at 10:30. I'm hoping that's when the update comes. But as of right now, there's no new information available other than the fact that, Ben had that CT scan in New York today, and he still has a foot, as far as we know.
Okay. Embiid, apparently some reports that he's not happy about the lack of transparency about his own injury. That's one guy you don't want to tick off.
Yeah, today was not a good day on the PR front for the Sixers, and I don't necessarily blame Embiid for being not too happy about it, because it kind of casts him in, not the most flattering light when it's constantly, if he's reported to media members and the public that it's basically a day-to-day thing, and he keeps, ends up sitting, it makes it look as though maybe he's the one that's sitting, whereas if they had just came out, basically the same qualms that the fans had. If they had just given the timetable realistically, it would have, I think, taken pressure off him. Like he said, he didn't like that his name kept being mentioned, because every day people were wondering, is Joel playing tonight? Is Joel playing tonight? And if they had just announced from the beginning that he wasn't going to play for, a couple weeks span, all that speculation and distrust would have been, avoided. And I think just like the fans felt that, he wasn't necessarily very happy with the way the team went about that situation.
So at the end of this 2 days, Ersan, Noel, Jaleel is still here. You feel like, there's a lot of people that look back and say, okay, they tanked for multiple seasons, and the one guy is traded. The other guy you wish you could trade. You look back and say, what were a lot of these? Were there lost years in this? I mean, how do you now surmise the last 4 years of Sixers basketball that the first guy of this process is gone? The second guy was really
the never-ending process.
Right. The second guy was Embiid and Sarge. They never played until this year. The third guy you want to trade. Does it make you feel a little different if you're somebody who supported what they've been doing?
Yes, to a small extent in my mind. Now, I mean, all 3 of these guys were never going to work. I think everyone knew that. This day was inevitable. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Okafor, but there was always the possibility that Nerlens wasn't going to be here long term. So I think, obviously as it happens, we lose a guy that's been here, and the gut reaction is to, be very, worried, which is legitimate. I don't think it's quite as big as an issue as, some are making it out to be. You take a step back, you still have the guys that are going to be core, like the main core, and you still have a lot of the assets in the cap space, which the whole thing was based upon. But with that being said, there's just a little bit of a different feel, at least, personally, and I think from the people that I've gotten to talk to just in the past couple hours, I think there's a little bit of doubt for the first time, losing an asset like that without having much to show for it. Like you said, especially Nerlens, who was basically the signifier of the process. His acquiring him and the Drew Holiday deal is basically what kicked off, the whole thing. So he kind of even especially represented the process more than most players. So I think that losing him and not having that security that we talked about definitely is it's kind of a different feeling. And I think now it leaves a kind of a question lingering in fans' minds going forward, since, nothing can be done now for the rest of the year until the off season as to what exactly direction the team was going. I think, a lot of people that assumed if you bring Nerlens back, you continue with the defensive identity and the pace that they've developed. With him gone and Ja now on the roster, not that the team took a step back because they still have so much to work with that Sam left, but I do think that there's a new level of uncertainty kind of regarding the process that wasn't there before this.
I know it's you can't answer this question, but you could certainly hypothesize, if you will. Would Sam have entered this season with these three guys on the roster?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think he had a pretty good feeling for, not to use an overused term as far as the Sixers, but, assets and or deteriorating assets and value. And I think there was a lot of offers around the trade deadline for both of these, or the draft back in June for both of these guys. We talked about several of them back then. I think, if not then before, I think he would have realized that the, market would continue to decline, and I think he would have made a move. I don't know which, obviously, it's impossible, like you said, to say exactly which one, but just based off the track record, I don't think that it would have gotten to this point if Sam was still making the call.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain with us. How about the 26 games left? How many games do you think they win the rest of the way?
Whew. That number definitely took a hit over the past, 20 hours or so, which I think might have been, not that this was also, in the forefront of the front office's mind, but that's kind of another silver lining of these couple trades. The team took, a noticeable step back in the short term. They're, without a starter and a key, reserve / fill-in starter in Nerlens. The depth took a big hit, and just the defense and the production. So, the wins are definitely going to take a hit. I would have to look at the exact schedule, but I thought maybe they would reach around 30 to 32. I think that number drops now to maybe mid to high 20s, if I had to guess. So that's another silver lining for the people that are, counting the where the lottery stands. The losses in the short term will obviously improve the odds of, the team's lottery standing this year, which I guess is, that's one way to look at it in a positive light. But, they definitely took a step backwards as far as the encore product in the short term with these deals.
And the one thing, Michael, they really have Dario to play the four, and that's it. Now you're going to start playing some guys that, like Covington was in a nice role. They mentioned they might have to play it. So that's one thing that it kind of scratches your head, that you had guys playing roles that looked like they were comfortable. And now just to get through this season, hey, Robert, you've been doing, really good at the three, but we're going to have to ask you to play some four. So the rotations are getting a little messed up here down the stretch. So that's one thing that makes you kind of scratch your head as well. I understand they had to do something with Ersan. He doesn't make a lot of sense here, but they don't really have another four on the roster.
No, they don't. And now it's another situation where Brett Brown is going to be forced to kind of juggle his roster and try different things out. Just like you said, when it seemed like the team had finally kind of found a nice rhythm where the 10 guys had very defined roles, and the style of play was able to pretty much stay the same from the first unit to the second unit. Now it's for the last 30 odd games or whatever, it's going to be a matter of, I think, like you said, kind of having players maybe have to step out of their comfort zones a little bit, mixing and matching in the starting lineups. And, basically just another level of experimentation. Obviously, especially with Jalil and Rashawn, I think that's a couple guys who obviously weren't getting tons of minutes during the first half of the season, who will see a big bump in minutes now for the rest of the season, which, especially considering the way Okafor plays, not in a positive or negative light, just his style of play it's different than what the Sixers have been doing. So I think that'll that'll definitely switch things up the way it looks on the court. So there's definitely a lot of changes, again, that Brett has to deal with now after finally what it seemed like there was a little bit of stability going on.
He's at the real Mike KB on Twitter for more on the Sixers. He'll have some stuff up on the trades at 97.3ESPN.com. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Mike.